Another Monday. Here we are.
Here we are.
Monday.
We're power and speed, right?
Yep. Nobody had to travel. No, nothing.
No.
Nada.
How can they get in touch with us, Tom? Because this one there might be some calls because people actually asked for this guy.
Yeah. 908-751-0211. And what else, Tad?
Like us on Facebook and iTunes. And, we should have a different music just than this, like an individual music for each of us, I'd think.
For what, like each of you?
Yeah. Sort of like, when you chime in for somebody.
So now you're a radio producer?
Yes.
Huh.
Don't you think so?
I know what we could use for Tom.
That's an idea.
Oh, people have been working on some shit without me.
That's what happens when you're late.
Is that Magnum PI?
Yes, it is.
I like it. Marco is laughing right now if he heard it.
I'm sure he's laughing.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right, so you guys actually had a plan. I like that. I like it.
I had to try to get Tad a little rehearsed, so it didn't come out like what he was talking about before.
Well, actually, I was looking at him like, wow, Tad's going. I was impressed. It was good.
You had a half hour to think about it.
So good thing I was late, I guess.
Yeah.
Or you showed up early enough to prep.
No, I was just got a half hour.
Oh, that was pretty good.
So.
I like it.
But now he's spent.
No,
there won't be anything else the whole show.
There's my 22 words to screw you all.
Yeah.
That's true. You are bringing your word count up for fun.
Actually, funny thing, we were just talking prior to the show. We should really record what we do prior to the show. We should. We should record the first 15 minutes and just keep them. And if we ever get jammed up, just loop them all together and play them. Because it's actually probably funnier than what we do during the show.
That
was my suggestion.
Tad would have to be wildly censored to do that.
Oh,
he's really out of control. I don't think people realize it, that he's the problem here, not us.
True.
He's the problem.
No, these people are attacking my headlights. Everybody should know. So,
well, see,
do we want to go there, Ted?
I'm here.
I want everybody to think.
You can go out and get pictures.
No. Zip it. I want everybody to think.
Imagine, if you will. Take a container of vanilla icing that your mom would put on a cake, or Alan would put on a cake. Smear it over the headlights. Okay? Yep.
And then turn the headlights on and tell me that they work. That's how sandblasted his headlights are.
But he's got new ones, doesn't he, Mike?
Yes, he has new ones.
But he won't put them on because
he'll hit a deer if he puts them on.
Got it.
But the main reason is when he goes to sell the car to the underground Lincoln Mark 8 restoration fan base, people are going to come from thousands of miles to give him $850
because he has new lights.
Because he has new headlights.
So when's he going to sell the car? When it's broken? That's when I'll. All right. So somebody's going to come buy a busted ass Lincoln Mark 8 with sandblasted headlights because you have new ones.
No, they'll have new ones on it at that point.
So. This is why we don't record the show because this is the nonsense that goes on.
All right. I lost my mind.
I was talking to somebody about how nice new headlights are when you put them in. When we got away from glass.
Yep.
And as soon as we got away from glass, everything pits and gets beat to shit.
Yep.
And a guy says, and I remember I was driving this Intrepid thing, 3.4 thing.
Yep.
And I put just new glass in it, the new plastics.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God.
I can see.
Ridiculous. And then it always reminds me every time I see this retard come up the driveway with the frosted headlights, it's like you did it on purpose. Not only that, one of them's filled with water.
Well, it's only half filled.
Yeah, it's only part filled. It's just raining in it.
Hey, the Cornerstone's listening.
Is he?
I had a shout out to Kaz.
Wonder if he heard my icing comment.
I don't think he did. He wasn't on then.
Well, listen to the replay, Alan. You'll be right there. All right, so Tommy Martino is going to call in.
He is.
And throughout us doing all of this, the particular show he was on with Dale Kubik and Tommy Martino. It is still to this day, and it's also, it's older, so, I don't want Junior or, Marco getting mad. I'm the highest downloaded or Howard from Redline.
Yep.
That is the highest downloaded show we still have.
Yeah.
So that's, I always thought that was pretty good.
It is good.
And
I think the Marco show is going to pass it just based on the numbers.
Maybe. Well, he is a little out there. Yeah. Tommy's a nice, reasonable guy to talk to. Marco's, although he did give us the Magnum PI crack.
He did.
So that was pretty good.
Yep.
There's a lot of things I want to talk to Tommy about. And you know what happens when I talk to him during the day? I have to stop myself from talking about all things.
All the shit you want to talk about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But there were some people that had asked some questions of me and to ask on the show, like we talked about roller cam bearings versus Babbitt.
Yep.
There's a lot of things like that.
Oh yeah. Hey, I want to bring something up that I thought about. I was watching drag racing this weekend, and do you remember the bet we had, all of us, about the mile an hour?
Yeah, I lost.
Yeah, I know that.
You won.
Yeah, I know that too. I'm not talking about that. Do you remember what our numbers were?
I don't remember no more.
Yeah, mine was I think mine was 212.50.
Yeah. I think I was like 210.
Yeah.
They're still like 209.50. They still have not figured it out, I guess.
Well, maybe either they didn't figure it out or they got that close off the bat that there wasn't that much there.
Yeah, maybe.
I was surprised that they went out at mile an hour decent. I really was. I didn't think they would. And I touched on that with Tommy a little bit today. He's got his own thoughts on it.
Oh, good. We can talk about it.
I really wouldn't have thought that they would have mile an hour anywhere near where they did. But I was talking to Alan today, and I guess Cornerstone.
No.
About car stuff?
Yes. Sometimes I manage to steer it away from politics and trying to explain to him.
Yeah, but how could you get anything intelligent out of him about cars?
Well, this was pretty basic. It didn't require any knowledge. It just required something that you read on the internet.
Oh, okay.
He knew that only 13 Pro Stocks are pre-registered for Englishtown. I don't know how many people normally register.
That's not unusual this far out.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, how far out is it? Because it's not
June 7th?
Yeah, it's not in July anymore. This fall, it's a month, not even a month.
Yeah, but there's guys in New Jersey that just drive there.
Yeah, but they wouldn't register?
Yeah, no, they will.
Okay. Well, after...
the guys that do the tour are all registered, and then you get your local couple guys that come in, like, what's his name? Przinski from up North Jersey. I don't know if Tommy's old guy will be there. There will be, I believe, 16 or more.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah. I don't think there's been an event that hasn't had 16.
Well, how many were at Houston? Yeah, Houston didn't have a full field.
Oh, no. Yeah, they might not have, because everybody was thinking that was going to get canceled because of all the weather.
Yeah.
That.
Oh, so you think that was a weather-related thing? People are like, I'm not going to... Okay.
Yeah, a couple days, our guy didn't even go down there. Our regular race guy.
Yeah.
They were talking about they didn't know if it was going to get canceled. People didn't know if they were going to make them go there and stay an extra week. It was really up in the air. That was during those huge floods.
Alan put in Atlanta 14.
So what?
So what, Alan? Don't worry, it's delayed.
No,
it'll take him a minute to hear it, and then it'll take him a minute to process.
Well, actually,
and then it'll take him a minute to...
Atlanta was last weekend, so
okay.
I guess there was one.
All right. Was there bad weather around there?
No.
I don't know. I didn't.
No. Well,
I don't know. I'm curious to see, like, Tommy has his own thoughts on...
Well, Alan, what do you think happened in Atlanta?
Yeah, Alan, why don't you pick up the damn telephone, you retard? 908-751-0211 in case you forgot.
He's probably a little scared.
Do you have the phone lines on?
Yeah.
Not like last week?
His wife might not let him use the phone.
Oh.
Or he might be making dinner. No, it should be past dinner.
Alan Crocker.
I'd still like to get him to come in one day, just sit there.
He should. We got an open seat.
Yeah.
So, we're...
Right next to me.
We'll talk about Pro Stock. I want to talk about ring seal pan vacuum. That kind of goes into something that you and I talked about briefly.
Yep.
Piston, shape.
Oh, yeah.
We'll call it shape.
Yep.
Clutch setup for the guys that have stick cars, because a lot of people think like a clutch is just a clutch, like you have in a street car. And there's so much more to it than that. I had a little discussion with Alan about that on several occasions. Because, we get into surfacing the clutch and doing the things that you do, and he said they don't have time, and I get it. And realistically, what we've got now is most of the things that are out there with, very high horsepower limits, like that are over 2,000, they're running automatic.
Yep.
So I think the clutch stuff and the finesse of it probably doesn't really sit with our listeners because it's comp, pro stock, something that competes at a stick shift level.
I wonder if Tommy's had any EFI stuff on his dyno, pro stock stuff, or A altered stuff.
I don't believe so, because I think if he did, he would have said something.
Yeah, I don't know.
He might have. I don't know.
It's some time since then.
Yeah, well, we'll ask him. Yeah. Look, he'll be on. Save your questions, Todd. You know, I know you got your word count up, but seriously, save your questions. All right. What else did you guys have this week? And anything interesting?
I didn't. I was down the shore at a condo meeting.
That's what you did? That was your big weekend?
Yeah.
I'm sure Tad, look, just follow his timeline. I'm sure he visited some fast food places that he took pictures of food.
Oh, me never.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Any place good?
White Castle.
Jesus.
At like 4 a.m, so.
Failure.
I did absolutely nothing car related.
Isn't it nice once in a while?
No.
I mean, me neither. I like it once in a while. Just to not do any car stuff. Although me and Howard did talk a little bit about the Middle East.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Saturday.
Yeah, I messed with electronics all weekend. I mean, it was just I had a lot to do, and I got actually an awful lot done. So I got caught up. That's why I came in here. I had so much trouble with everything this weekend. I turned everything on, and I'm like, please work. I just didn't need another issue like I had the other week.
My younger brother cited his AR-15.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the first one he got.
Are we allowed to talk about firearms? Is that
Tad?
Is that politically correct?
I don't know.
I don't want to offend anybody that's listening with that, boo, bad guns. So,
I think we can talk about them.
yeah, I don't care. I talk about it anyway. I talk about that. I talk about politics. And, at one point, I had actually said to someone else again, my good friend Fudd, I said I was going to see Tom always runs out of here. Like as soon as the mics turn off.
Boom.
Did you ever see like those cartoons with like,
Wile E. Coyote.
Wile E. Coyote or Bugs Bunny, and they take off and there's a little bunny-shaped, hole.
A little smoke trail.
Yeah.
That's Tom.
Yep.
Gone the minute that it's off.
That is true.
But I was kind of thinking.
My agent makes me leave.
Yeah. The other stuff that we talked about doing.
After the show?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I don't mean planning.
Right.
I don't mean that. I mean other interests we have.
Yep.
Maybe on nights that we have a big listenership.
Yep.
We could see if they want to stay on and have a conversation in that direction.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, that might be an easy way to do it.
Yeah.
There we go.
I think.
We're going to get them to call in, or we're just going to be looking at the Mixler?
Well, whatever.
It could be both.
However it works.
It could be both. It doesn't matter. I mean, Tad, it's not, we don't.
I'm just pushing my word count up, so ignore me.
We don't have anybody, there's nothing we have to do. I mean, we can do whatever we want.
We should run by.
Wait, our sponsors are going to get a little pissed here.
Yeah, there is some news on that front, though. But
okay.
We'll talk about that after the show.
We should talk about that forum concept thing that one of my boys told me about. Tad, you might not know about it, but me and Mike talked
of
like a live forum type.
A way to get listeners involved when we have very specific guests.
Yeah,
and I think that could be pretty beneficial. I mean, there's some things we can do, and especially when you have the higher profile guests that appeal to a particular market segment.
Right.
IAG for Subaru, Marco for Mitsubishi or, whichever,
GTR,
and GTR, Junior for tuning. When you grab those groups of people, there might be a better way to integrate them into the show.
So we want to ask the people what they think. And we have kind of an idea of how to do it, but it'll require probably a screener.
I'm still upset that we dropped the drifting. That's such a high-tech thing.
In one automotive thing, what I did say, and I got to give those guys credit. Well, first off, Tad's all full of piss and vinegar. He gets a little upset at the Marco thing.
Yeah,
I did.
Because I got to bring this up again. Subaru guys, just tune out for a second because this is exclusively for Tad. The rotary of today. How awesome is that? I see that, and I started talking about Evos.
I know.
And I just asked, saying something about them, and he's like, who drive one of them? Their interior's terrible. And I was like, well, your cylinders point two different directions. But I got to watch, what was that thing? It's a rallycross that happened in Belgium. I have a particular service of TV. I'm using that PlayStation View thing.
Yep.
And it has something called Being, B-E-I-N, or B-E-I-N, I don't know.
Something.
But they had this rallycross deal on.
Yep.
Those guys are getting it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is no joke. And they're soft enough that when they go into the corner, they kind of roll over and sort of float and half drift and half float. Those guys are nuts.
Yep.
That was as good to watch the race as the Australian supercars.
I don't know about that.
It was pretty good, dude.
Yeah, it is pretty good. I know.
But there was not one Subaru. Sorry, Ted.
No, they're out. I mean,
they're out.
Well, I mean, I don't think they're pushing too much
Mitsubishi,
anymore.
there wasn't there either, so.
No, it's probably all Ford Focuses, Volkswagens.
Mm-hmm.
What else was there?
Citroens and
Peugeots,
Pugats.
whatever a Peugeot is.
Pugats. Yeah.
Pugat.
Did Ford win?
No, Audi won, actually.
No, that would make sense too. But Ford, apparently that Focus now is really badass. We'll talk about that another time. This guy's more
by the way, on that note, remember the kit car deal that we were looking at?
Yeah.
I saw them build one on one of the Sunday morning TV shows.
You know, Tommy Martino's on hold, Ted, and he does remember you. He might kill himself.
Anyway, they put the STI and trans in it now. What we were talking about that they said they didn't know anything about.
Right.
And they put one of the Ecotechs in it too.
Oh,
so.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you, Ted.
Yep.
Hang on. Tommy, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, buddy. We were just rambling.
What's up, Tom?
Teasing Tad a little bit.
Rambling. Yeah.
What's up, guys?
What's happening?
Good to have you back, man.
Yep.
Well, good to see you. Or talk to you anyway.
See you.
Yeah.
You were actually pretty highly requested. A lot of people wanted you to come back. So, you know, I mean, I think that's pretty good for all of us.
Shows you how much the public knows.
So I noticed you changed your name. April 1st of all things. Like it's an April Fool's or something?
Well, it could be. No, I was Martino Race Engines prior, back in, I guess, in 2002 when I stopped racing full time, became Martino Race Engines, and about 4 years ago I went partners with Bob Benza and created MB Race Engines, and I had since that lasted for a couple of years, and we parted amicably, and I bought him out, and I took my girlfriend to the trade show this year to show what the industry is really about. People get a false sense of what engine building and racing and this whole industry is. It's just not a bunch of greasy fingernail guys. And we got back to the hotel room that first night, and she says, I owe you an apology. She says, I never realized that this business is all of what it is. The displays here are magnificent. She says, the second thing is, I can't believe how many people know you. And I don't mean that in a self-serving way, just, being around the business for so long and racing on a tour for so many years, you just make a lot of acquaintances. She says, the third thing is, I started to keep count. She says, about 3 out of every 4 people say, so what are you doing now?
Good point.
She says, you need to change your name back. People don't realize that you're still building engines. Because MB Race Engines is a faceless company to people, and name recognition is everything in this business, as you know. Unless you have a bad name, and my name's mediocre, so I figured I'd go back to it.
I don't know if it's mediocre. No, you absolutely, and I agree. That's why I was wondering, because I went to go pull a piece of artwork or something today, and I said, oh, he changed his name to Martino, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, good. Right. Yeah, I was just wondering why that happened. I thought it was a little weird, but just everybody can find you now. Now it's, what is it actually? MartinoRacingEngines.com?
Martino Race Engines LLC. So, and it's on the website is MartinoRaceEngines.com.
Okay, good. So everybody can go there.
And it still will carry over. People that don't know yet could still hit the MB and it'll come up, and there's an announcement on there, so they can you could get it either way. So,
all right, excellent.
And it should get a little smoother, or you might be giving me bail money for choking my IT guy. Somehow, him and I don't like the words that come out of my mouth don't really register in his head, So
yeah, I can relate to that from both sides, actually.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, I might not be the easiest guy either, because I don't quite understand, and I think I should say something that should be done, I don't realize all the stuff that they need to go through to make it happen. So.
Yeah, some of the stuff takes some time, but there's that's a whole nother story about why there's a disconnect. But yeah, no, I hear you. So right. I got to ask you, before you came on, I was talking about a friend of mine, and we were talking about pro stock and car counts. How were they last year? I mean, they were not wonderful last year, correct?
Actually, they're only a little worse this year so far. I thought it was going to be worse than what it is. But I also was fed some false information. Jason Line told me there was an 80% chance that he wasn't going to race this year. He was going to race a stock eliminator car, mostly due to funding. You know what it was going to cost to convert everything over and get up and running. I don't know whether they secured more funding or just the drive to want to do it caused them to come out. Alan Johnson was not coming out unless he got the marathon deal. So I figured that we were going to lose a couple of full-time regulars, and it's as in our other podcast that this has made it so expensive for the part-timers to come out that I knew it was going to eliminate most of them, including us. So I think it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be car count wise, but and some of it could be attributed to the economy. If it wasn't for DSR or John Force, there'd be less cars in Top Fuel and Funny Car than there are in Pro Stock.
Sure, and this could be one of those things for me anyway. When I wasn't following, I wasn't following Pro Stock weekly. Like used to be. The old shop, you get National Dragster, you look through everything.
Right.
Ray Ribberty qualified, what their separation was, who ran good mile an hour, who was surprising, who sucked. You just knew it. But since I don't do it for a living anymore, I don't look. So when people told me that there were like 13 cars here, 14 cars there, or, whatever it was, I was kind of surprised, and I didn't really look back to see if the counts had fallen down to sub-full field level in Pro Stock. So I just didn't know.
They did last year. I think it's like I said. I didn't run numbers or pay attention, but it's a little worse this year from talking to people, but not as bad. I thought we were going to have a lot of 12 and 13 car fields, and it's been 16, 15, 14. So
yeah, not good.
We'll see. No. But I also was wrong in the performance level of the EFI era. So I think that it might tend to lead more guys like Bob Benza and the like to come out, because maybe it does open the door a little bit for someone to be a little more competitive. If you throw the KB operation out, those three cars, the field is really pretty close.
Yeah.
So it looks like if you have a really good tuner, that between the EFI and the 10,500 rev limit rule, I think it would lend itself to closer racing, except for those top three.
Yeah. I hadn't really realized that those guys, we had talked about it briefly today, but I knew the fields were close, but after we talked today, I went back and looked to see just how close some of the fields were over history, even like last year, how close they really are together. And, we talked about exactly this. How could all these different people running from all different shops, all different cars, all different engines, all different carburetors, manifolds, what have you, go that level of consistency? I mean, that is absolutely mind-blowing. And I don't think anybody really realizes how big of an accomplishment that is. I mean, I would have to think that if the regular person just had a pile of money and decided I want to go Pro Stock race, they wouldn't even be in the neighborhood, would they?
No.
Well, they wouldn't unless they hired a lot of the right people. What happens is the people that have a lot of money want to come in. They're usually successful business people. And they're successful because they know how to do what they're doing. In our line of business, in the Pro Stock line of business, it runs your life. I can. After I stopped racing full time, I made a living crew chiefing for probably half a dozen years before I finally got tired of not being home at all and not getting to drive the car. And there was many a sleepless Friday night and Saturday night trying to decide on gear ratio, and clutch settings and carburetor and tune-up and tires and everything else. There isn't one part of that car from the front bumper to the back that isn't looked at for every single run to make the car faster. So now you have a group of 20 cars out there back in the day when there was that many or more out there. We eat, live, drank. That was our lives. Our dyno screen ruled my life when I was home.
Right.
I mean, it absolutely ruled my life. When I was at the track, the computer graph and clutch settings and transmission ratios were. I mean, we all have. I'm not an IT guy. I had more programs for telling me percentages of slippage to drop, and we would change gear ratios by half a point because the RPMs dropped 40 RPM lower than we wanted on a gear change, took it out of that range, and it was, you're always after it at all times, and that's what happens. The field just gets so tight because everyone refines everything so significantly. I mean, you have 16 different drivers with 16 different sets of tires, 16 different carburetors, now EFI, but everything different. Who likes to have more torque? Who likes power up high? And the end result is a tight field. It really is amazing. So.
It is. It's kind of, I'm blown away by it because, I mean, it's, we're talking like, Tommy and I had a little bit of a conversation today about some of the things that some of the people had asked about. And a guy asked specifically about the clutch stuff. And I really don't know. I mean, I've been to the track and I've seen him surface the clutch. But, I mean, Tommy, when you have one of those clutches in that car, first off, they're ungodly expensive, aren't they?
Well, they've skyrocketed. They're all titanium. It's a matter of being stiff. When we started turning them over 10,500, you were having problems with them releasing at the end of the run. So they had to redesign the covers and where the posts were for the levers. You have a draw full of levers. They're generally a 6-lever clutch, and each lever gets counterweight bolted on it. Well, you'd have a draw full of levers depending on which track you're at, depending on how aggressive you want that counterweight to come in. Where the counterweight is on the lever. So I mean, and there's no wrong way. It's just whatever works for you, and it's a nightmare of a thought process.
Now, is that clutch surfaced between every pass?
Every pass. We don't surface they have a coating. They have a tungsten steel coating on the floater, the 2 floaters, mm-hmm. pressure plate, and the donut on the flywheel. That's usually good for about 35 to 40 runs, but you surface the disc every run, only so it could repeat. Because what happens is it gets glazed over, and sometimes when it glazed over, it gets more aggressive because you have more surface area. Sometimes you glaze it too hard, and it's less aggressive. And to be standing in the lanes and have an upset stomach and want to throw up because you want to decide whether you want to put 1 gram more on the clutch or take 1 gram off, you can't be worried about is what the disc did. You have to know what the disc is going to do.
All right, so it's basically it gives you a fresh, consistent starting surface.
Right. I know I had 3 turns and 38 grams on it. I resurfaced it. I know that three turns and 38 grams is going to act exactly the same way. Now I'm only making the change for the ratio change you might have made, or the track condition, or the RPM you're going to leave at. Mm-hmm. So the clutch unit is the same.
Right.
Is going to act the same.
Now, all of this, the other misconception of the clutch stuff is that the clutch slips when you leave the starting line, and then its job is done and it's locked up and you just drive.
That would be great. Yeah. Then we would all, first of all, crew chiefs would make about 1/10 of what they make because we could all figure out how to just slip it in low and lock it up after there. No, it depended on track conditions. You have a target RPM that you want it to lock up at, and it's not the same in each gear. Hence, the materials you might they run 3-disc clutch now. It's very often that those 3 discs are not the same material because you need that clutch to lock up sooner when you're in high gear, because obviously when you're strolling along at 190 miles an hour, it needs less clutch to lock up on a gear change than it does when the car's only moving 100 miles an hour, when it changes gear. So, you want the most amount of slip in low, a little less in second, a little less in third, a little less in fourth. And on a really good track, sometimes you don't even slip it at all in when you put it in fifth. But it's a real balancing act on materials and finger angles and counterweight in order to let that thing lock up when you want it to lock up.
Yeah.
And there's programs out there that get you in the ballpark, but the program doesn't tell you, that I have a 55-inch bar in that hits really hard, or I have a 66-inch bar in that doesn't hit as hard. It just tells you, it gives you a characteristic of what the clutch will do at a certain RPM.
Yep.
Now you have to take into account what kind of adjustments you made to the car.
So that's where those guys earn their money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew that from everybody. I mean, I'd never, attended pro stock races, with anybody. Like I'm never actively involved. But I remember, I think we were at Englishtown one day and Tommy was testing, and I remember him surfacing the clutch. And I remember how involved and like what they were doing to try to, I was blown away back then.
Yep.
But when I was talking to somebody about it, again, our same guy, but Alan, I was telling him my method or my thought as to why the disc was surfaced to begin with. And he's like, well, it's to get your assembly heights right. And I said, no, I think it's that you surface the disc so you have a fresh surface. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And it turns out I was right.
You could get the assembly heights right no matter, I could put 10 runs in a row without taking the clutch out, and I could turn the barrels and get my ring height exactly back where it is every single run.
Okay.
The IHRA guys, I don't know what they run now for clutch, but they used to run a big 10.5-inch clutch, and they would surface it before they got to the race, and then they would surface it before eliminations, and then in between, all they would do is just reset their ring height. But they had, at that time, before they started running clutchless 5-speeds, they had Lenkos, so they had much more other adjustability.
Yeah.
Than what a 500-inch pro stock car had. Plus, they did not run nearly, and that's not a knock on them at all, they did not run nearly as fast as the power was for how fast, as compared to an NHRA car for the power they had.
Yeah, like exactly the dream wheel calculator we were talking about.
Yeah.
Right. I told Michael earlier that whenever I was, we would work on something, Tommy Kling and I, we were in a comp eliminator, and we'd find a little power to everything. I'd call Ralph and say, the thing made this, we went 170, what should it go? Well, it should go 170, 50. We'd go to the track and we'd go 170, 45 or 170, 55. He hit it within a tenth, no matter what, whether it was a bracket car, a comp car, stock eliminator, super stock car. He always thought I lied to him when I raced pro stock about how much power they had. He said, there's no way it only makes, 1,225 horsepower. It can't, that thing should go 725. You just went 701. But what he never had in his mind was he was never at the track to see how refined those cars were, how many, everything that you adjusted to get everything out of it.
Right.
If he ever did, he was hard on his customers as it was, telling them how fast they should go.
Yeah.
He would have lost all his customers. Some of his fastest super stock guys should have been 2/10 faster with the power he gave them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those cars don't make the forward moves that a pro stock car does instantly.
Exactly. That's not what he had.
Right.
He did not realize if he ever stood on a starting line and watched a pro stock car just go first 1-2, it would have taken his breath away.
Sure.
I've taken people to the track with me when I raced pro stock. Friends of mine who wanted to go test and come back from making the first run. They'd be in the pit, white as a ghost, not scared. Not they were afraid. It was like, holy cow, I cannot believe you dropped the clutch. It's like the track moves back 3 feet and then the car goes forward. The thing just is gone.
Yep.
And like, I blink, next thing you know, the scoreboard, lights up. The thing gets small in a hurry. They just, the motion of those cars. That's what makes it so fun to drive. I mean, it's such a rush of 0 to 100 in under a second.
I can imagine.
While you're shifting.
Crazy. Hey, can we talk more about fuel injection?
Sure.
Because I just looked at the spread from Atlanta last week,
and
it's way farther than I thought it would have been.
What was it?
It was from 210 and high change down to 204. Now let's call the 204 a leaker. I forget who it was, a problem, whatever. But it still went down to big names at 206.5.
Yeah.
So there's a big power disparity there.
It's about 3 to 3.5 miles an hour. But if you throw the KB cars, Greg Anderson, Bo Butner, and Jason Line out of it, it comes down to about 1.5 to 1.75 miles.
Right. But why are those guys so far out to lunch, Tom? All the other guys.
My opinion, and I have no information or know anything.
Not enough manly parts in there.
Well, I think it's the manly valve.
There you go.
There we go.
This is what I look at. About, if you think back about 5 years ago, they had a little advantage on everybody.
Yep.
And then everyone caught up to them. I think that group is very, very. There's two things going on there. That group is very, very smart. They got a new challenge, the 10,500 fuel injection, changing their whole thing around. Jason Line and his guys at the shop, and the pool of smart people that they're able to get information from in the NASCAR world that I'm sure he's still very good friends with. They were able to adapt to what that combination wants sooner than the other top engine builders, because I don't want to make them feel bad, but they're just not as good as them. So,
let me. I just gotta say one thing about those guys too. I know for a fact. I know they all work hard, but I know Jason and Greg and that team. I don't know them personally, but I know that team really will not be outworked. I mean, they put their time in.
That's fact. I am personal friends with them. My daughter stays at Greg's house when she goes to Charlotte.
Yep.
I talk to Jason probably every week and a half to 2 weeks. So, we bust chops about stock eliminator stuff back and forth. And I promise you that not only are they very smart, they are workaholics.
Yep.
I mean, that like I said, that my dyno screen ruled my life when I was home, and that computer screen ruled my life when I was away. That's what it does for them too. I mean, there's not a waning moment where they're not trying to think of how to make the car faster or how to make more power.
Well, I wonder what the guys are missing. I mean, it can't be just the amount of time they put in. You think they're missing the good tuning guy? Like they've got...
I'll tell you the second thing is they happen to have John Meany in their corner. And I know John Meany from Dan Jessel. Dan and John were friends, and John used to be at the shop once in a while. And, he owns Big Stuff, the electronic fuel injection company. And we'd be running the dyno, and he'd come in, and he'd shoot little ideas, throw little things on me about tuning. And we had carburetors on there. But he has a way of thinking, and I think that not only is he ahead of the curve on just tuning an engine than a lot of the other guys, he has figured out for them, those motors accelerate so fast. Obviously I have a dyno in my shop. People come in with fuel injected motors. They bring their tuners in. I watch how they tune it. It's actually fairly easy. If you're not scared of the laptop, it's it's a little lean there. Let me put 3% fuel from 8,000 to 8,800. These motors accelerate so fast that you actually have to lead it in order for the motor to accelerate properly. And I think John Meany has figured out what that needs to have, because the reason why I say that is I get all the results on the short times. I'm still a junkie, even though I'm not involved anymore, but I get the results mailed to me from every round of who went what in 60, who went what in 330, who went what at the 8th, and the KB cars out travel the rest of the field by more than the amount of power they could have, and that only tells me that the motor is accelerating that much faster.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know what I mean? These crew chiefs didn't get the elite crew chiefs who couldn't be beat the last 2 years didn't get stupid on how to gear ratio and four-link setup and weight distribution and clutch setup. They didn't forget all that stuff. Mark Ingersoll is probably the single smartest best crew chief out there.
Yeah, none of that stuff cares if it's fuel injected or carbureted.
Exactly.
I mean, it's all the same.
He didn't forget how to go from 60 to 330. You know what I mean? He didn't forget how to get the thing up on a tire within the first 10 foot of the racetrack. So I just think the motors don't accelerate as fast. You know, so you add in, you have the KB guys probably have more power than everybody right now.
Well, they do.
Not the amount that you see, not the amount that it looks like, but they do at the racetrack because their motor is tuned, you know, perfectly. So they have it on both ends.
Yeah, they really.
And they're not so shabby about getting a car from point A to point B either. You know, they didn't win all those races because they had power.
Yeah. You throw the whole package together and you got what you got. You got those three guys at the top.
Right. And Bo Butler's just enjoying the ride.
Yep.
So on the quest for power of the engine builder in general, this was something that was brought up to me by an actual listener. This was not, you know, a friend or my own thought, because I had my own thought because of, you know, my exposure and, you know, things that my dad told me. Roller bearing camshaft, yes or no, in the scheme of things?
No.
Really?
I think it does. I think it does a couple things. We went to roller bearing camshafts, mostly because we all got on this kick of controlling our oil consumption in the engine, turning the pump slower, only putting the oil where we wanted to put it, not having excess oil flying around, you know. And it was okay. But we were turning the motors 10,000 RPM, 10,200. We only had, you know, a 60 millimeter cam was big at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now you have 70 millimeter camshafts. You cannot, now they're back down to 10,500, but, you know, they were turning that stuff over 11,000. That harmonic that's transferred through that bearing, you now no longer have that oil acting as a shock absorber up to that valve train. If you don't have everything just right, it's horrible on parts. Benz and I were fairly competitive for what we did. You know, we would be a 13 and down, 13, 14, 15, 16 kind of car. We were only turning our stuff 10.4. We would cross at 10.5, but shifting at 10.3 to 10.4. Well, everyone stepped up, and we were, you know, having to make killer runs to sneak in at 15 or 16, and we had to turn it higher. We didn't need to make any more power, just needed the motor to carry farther so we could run 20 more points of rear gear, which in turn would make you faster. We couldn't go more than a half a dozen runs without wanting to pull valves through, keepers through retainers, or actually separating the valve in the beadlock groove. Would actually, you know, you'd come back and oops, there we go. You know, lost the lash.
And you mean a same profile camshaft wouldn't exhibit that behavior if it was in a Babbitt bearing?
Well, we did one motor. Right at the end there, we did a 65 millimeter Babbitt bearing, and I went up to Epping. I drove the car up to Epping, New Hampshire, and it's the best we ran, and it was not our. We had broke both our good engines at Englishtown. And it was our number 3 engine, and I qualified number 12 I turned it, I put enough gear in it to turn it. I shifted it at 10.7 and turned it 10.9 in the traps, and it lived. If I turned our roller bearing camshaft 10.9, I promise you, if I came back and realized I overshifted it and it was at 10.9, that motor would have came out without us even checking it.
And you see, those are the funny things. Like you put a roller bearing setup in, you know, you got better oil control, you know, what people would think because they turn it over in the engine stand and say, oh my God, look at all this friction I lost. Well, that's not really what happens when the motor's running, but, you know, okay, if that's what you think. People draw the wrong conclusions. So, I mean, you could put something like that together and never even think, well, gee, I wonder if that is hurting us. You know, what could possibly be wrong?
But see, now I'm talking pro stock. I think I'm like, you know, I do a lot of, probably 40% of my business is circle track stuff. You know, it only makes low 500 horsepower. If I was allowed to use a roller bearing in that, I'd have it in a heartbeat.
You think it would be You think it wouldn't exacerbate a bad area of the valve train? Like that?
Exactly. I do, because we're locked into 2 or 3 different springs in Pro Stock. It's the only ones you could run, for, to control that valve at that RPM. Well, there's a whole host of springs to control something at 7,500 RPM. So all you need to do is find whatever spring handles the harmonic that's coming up through there, and now you have your oil control. And I do believe it is less friction. I know when you have oil pressure, the cam's supposed to be floating in oil, but I can't help when I rebuild the motor look at it and why do I have to change a cam bearing here or there? It obviously isn't always floating in oil. So I do believe that there is some frictional loss. But I think in a 500 on the seat, 1,300 open at 10,500, that roller bearing is you can't get the clearance just right. Now the clamshell style cam does have a bearing in it, but that's all one piece made with no clearance.
Right.
With the proper amount of clearance.
Right.
It's not rattling around in the engine. Now you put a roller bearing cam, you slide a cam and a motor roller bearing cam, you could jiggle the cam. You've put plenty of cams in Babbitt bearings.
Sure.
You're not jiggling that cam.
No.
And that jiggling is just getting exacerbated at RPM and spring load.
Yeah.
Jiggle's a technical word, right?
Highly technical.
Yeah.
I've used quite a few of them on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, away from the camshaft thing, Tom and I were starting to have a conversation about piston shape. Is that something you want to talk about or no?
Yeah, I'm sure. I have no problem talking about it. I'm not sure I know all of what's right. I have my own thoughts. That doesn't mean they're correct.
I know exactly 0. I know it's not round.
So he's way ahead of you.
Yes.
I find that hard to believe.
Well, I know it's not round. I know there are certain places you measure, and I certainly know the importance of ringlands and and that area. But I mean,
we'll throw a ringland out of it because a ringland is ultimately important no matter what piston it is.
Sure.
Whether, it needs to be flat and smooth and consistent. In a race piston. If you have 0.6 clearance, you can't have a ringland that varies a couple tenths. And in these new rings, these new small rings, we run as little as 3 to 4 tenths of clearance. That ring groove better be proper, otherwise you're going to stick a ring in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. And for all the people listening, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths clearance in a top ring is insanely tight.
Yes.
It's insane.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and you can't run that without that whole environment being built around that also.
Right.
I don't want people to think, can't buy a Manley piston because it's got a little over 1,000 clearance. That's what it needs to have because of what environment it's going in. You're not putting $2,200 rings in that piston.
I can't even imagine that something that's that snug would even turn while the motor's at room temperature, that it would move nice. Does it?
Yeah. We on those 021 rings, we run 3 to 4 tenths.
And like when you're assembling and you have the ring on the piston, it moves nice. Like that was always one of the barometers.
It feels a little snug.
Yeah, we should call it sticky.
It moves nice, but not sticky.
No,
not sticky at all. It just feels like it has a little drag. The scariest part is pushing it in the cylinder. It's I used to just use your elbow and bang. Well, you just ruined the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're so small.
Your thumbs on it, and you make the sign of the cross, and you push it. And you're nice, Otherwise, there goes a $140 top ring.
Well, when we manufacture, all piston manufacturers say they make the best stuff all the time, blah blah blah. But when you make a pro stock piston versus a Ford modular piston that's kind of made every day, 1 million times a day, right. You don't. It's just how it is. You just don't put the same care and quality. When we were making cup pistons, we were measuring ring flatness to the millionth. Ringland flatness to the millionth, and that's what pro stock guys do now every day. I don't know how you don't kill yourself every night, doing that shit, Tom. But
well, and that's what I meant by those guys. That's why those cars are so fast, because not just the ringland. Now we're thinking about the clutch and the tire and everything else the same exact way.
Same thought process. Yep.
And I like to believe that's part of the reason why our circle track motors, run at the front of the pack week in and week out.
Of course it is.
We do put that same thought process into that. Now, we don't put motors together with 4/10 clearance. I mean, not that we don't think it could run, but my average customer, if I ever told them, we're going to buy a set of rings, it's $1,250. I'm going to duck because I'm only 5'7" at 180. Most of those guys are used to fighting on Saturday nights as it is. They probably not down my throat. So.
Yeah, that's a. I mean, and just to go back to touch on one thing, because I know Tommy's interfaced with enough of these guys now. Tommy is of the mindset that, like I always was and my dad was, that, well, look, if you can put more gear in it, it's multiplied horsepower as long as your motor can run. And that is just a maddening conversation. Maddening.
Oh, yeah. I can't hook it up. Okay, so when I ran your motor on a dyno, I rebuilt it. It was 3 down. You're having a fit.
Yeah.
Because the motor's 3 down from the last rebuild.
And then you'll take 20 points of gear out because you can't get it to hook.
Because you can't afford new pistons. I'm telling you that the piston is wore out. We need pistons. I put it together. It's 3 down. You're having a fit. But you'll go to the track. You'll take that 593 out and put a 577 in because you can't hook it up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you realize how much power you just took out of the car?
And they don't even realize it. I mean, you can talk to them till you're blue in the face, and they don't get it. It's hilarious.
That's why, Bob Cave works for me. Who's a super intelligent, and he's a number crunching kind of guy, and he has not ever been to Wall Stadium. We've won every race so far this year at Wall Stadium.
Nice.
I got to come back down. We got to talk, Tom, because that's got to be a good conversation.
And he refuses to go there. He says, I can't go there. He says, we will lose business. We have a guy come in the middle of the summer and say, this thing's just a little, it doesn't have the jump to it. Well, just put some more gear to it. No. Why I need gear? Well, because it was a 107 correction night. It was 104 degrees. The correction was one. Well, what's the correction have to do with it?
I mean, this is why it was so hard for my dad. I mean, because this is fact. Terrible.
Yeah. Well, I have a small handful of customers that have listened enough. They don't agree with us, but they know they're fast. So I think they appease us and understand. They got to put 10 points of gear in when forget about it. I have a little weather app. Whenever they see me on a weather app, they go, "Here he goes again."
Yeah, those guys are too much. I mean,
Here we go again. I mean, that's what it means.
Takes us far off the road of Piston Shape, but it's just so funny because he said it before, and he's doing the circle track stuff now, and I know exactly the conversations you have with these guys. The guy says, "Well, my motor's a little flat on the bottom." Well, what'd you do for gear? Well, I took 20, 30 points out for the feature, and you're wondering why it's flat?
Yeah.
Well, if you put more gear in it, I can't hook it. Then is your motor no good or is your car no good? I mean, they were circular, awful conversations.
And they don't get it.
No. But back to Piston Shape.
I just give them a bill and for the motor and let them go. But the piston thing is, I think that over the last, I would say, half a dozen years or so, the shape of the shape and size in between the ringlands has become very important. Where that wants to support the piston, because the pistons, I'm sure you've seen late model pistons, the skirts are nothing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So now you don't have those, a lot of room for stabilizing the piston with these small rings.
Mm-hmm.
So they have designed the piston ring bands, the spot between the first and second ring and the second ring and the oil ring. They've put an ovality and high spots on that to help stabilize the piston so you don't have to have that full skirt. I've showed Tom when he was at the shop where a really good piston, well, I shouldn't say a good piston because where a piston that makes a lot of power, where it only hits, on a cylinder wall in order to stay stable. And the smaller and lighter tension the ring is, the more important that is, because obviously if you have an 024 ring, it doesn't take a lot of rock for that thing not to be flat on the cylinder anymore.
Sure. Yep.
And you can't run clearances down, to 2 thou to keep the piston straight. I mean, you might be able to design a material that can run at 2 thou clearance, but now how much frictional are you going to have, to keep the piston straight? Mm-hmm. So it's a real balancing act to keep that thing stable and straight in order to run the small ring and without adding any friction to it. And I think the biggest thing that has helped them is this new, billet forgings.
Yeah.
It's made it easier for them to get what they want. And any of the top engines have got a billet forging in it now. Now, billet forgings, when they first came out, I got my first set from Diamond when I was racing. We were still building pro stock engines, and all it did was it took the piston from my cost at $1,500 a set to $2,500 a set, and we seen zero power. Well, then they started redesigning what they could do with that, and then now it's probably worth about 10 horsepower on a pro stock engine, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we would kill for 10.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you tell a circle track guy he found 10, he's happy. But
he still can't hook it.
No, he'll take another 5 a gear out. That's all.
Right.
Hey, Tom, one of our listeners just asked if you know today, how much compression do they run in a pro stock car today?
Anywhere from 15.4 to 16.2.
Jesus. That's a lot of squeeze.
Depends, and what it depends on is some of the like the Hemi stuff is probably a little over 16. The DRC-3 stuff is probably up or in that range also. DRC-2 stuff, the size, the size valves that they run, it's hard to get a chamber smaller than 60 cc's with the combination of the valve angles. And I can't say you shouldn't. I shouldn't say no one out there, but the valve angles that are commonly run in pro stock, it's hard to get a DRC-2 head because of the position of the valves and where they need to be in the chamber not to hit each other, to get it under 60 cc's or 59 cc's. And you don't want a 350 tall dome with shrouded, you have a valve release or 315 deep because you're lifting a valve over an inch 100.
Yeah. So
you have a deep valve relief. Now you put a dome up there to get your compression. Now you have all that intake charge is shrouded.
Yeah, you're hurting. You're trying to get
plunged. You still do plunge the release, but you don't want a deep relief. It's plunged just because we want to let the flow go where it goes. You plunge it and then finish the dome the way you think it needs to be. So it's hard to get, like in the stuff that I run, 15.6. I'm not happy with the piston if I have more than 15.6.
Okay.
Look at the piston. I could get 16, 16.2, but it doesn't run any better, and it's very prone to detonation.
Yeah. Yeah, all that's got to be the point of diminishing return. And I know we just talked about how close you cut it, that if there was 1 or 2 there, you'd explore it. So, yeah, I understand that.
And we got sent down the wrong road some because it's good on the dyno. I could put, if I'm making 1,400 horsepower, let's just say, at 15.6, and I put 16.2 in, the thing makes like 14.08, 14.09. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty pumped to that. If it goes to the track, it runs like it's got 13.80. Mm-hmm. Until I get enough timing out of it, so I don't have aluminum all over the spark plug, and how it really is. I come back, put it on the dyno, it's only making 13.90. You know what I mean? You have to detune it enough so it doesn't eat itself up. So it's a tough balancing act.
Interesting.
Unless you're rich enough to have cylinder pressure on your dyno.
Listen, Tommy, I don't
detonation you're in.
I don't think you got to be as rich for that anymore. There's some guys that actually, I made contact with them, and then they got busy, and then they had trade shows. It's a company, Plex Tuning, and I don't think it's astronomically expensive.
It's like 2 G's.
Yeah. I mean,
I that would be something that I would love to add to my dyno. I don't think it would help my circle track stuff at all, because that stuff's, you know,
because they just take gear out of it.
Besides the obvious.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that, like my asphalt stuff, you're only allowed to be 12-1 with a flat top. So it's pretty, you know, you pretty much know your edge where you are. The dirt stuff, it might help a little bit, you know, or, you know, that 18-degree dirt stuff, I could see how that could want to detonate. It's, you know, it's making upwards of 900 horsepower now. You know, we run it close to 15-1. Might help it, but I guarantee you, we have some awful fast comp eliminator customers, and I know I stepped over the edge a couple times, and the motors didn't run as good. And I would love to have. That's something I need to look into, because I would definitely help our program and our you know, comp eliminator stuff.
well, we're going to try to have those guys on, because they, I mean, to me, like, thinking about what mechanically goes on in a motor, and then you have, you know, like the compression, the intake charge, and everything about it. The one thing that's always kind of a mystery that you can't really unravel is what actually happens the minute that, you know, everything starts to happen, or the seconds before, you know, and to see that cylinder pressure is just priceless to me.
You know, I think if you understand the internal combustion engine and someone could give you that information, you could make it better.
Yeah.
You know, well, one of the biggest gains we ever made was Autolite spark plugs was very good to me when I raced Pro Stock in the late 90s. Up until 2000, they sort of dropped the program some. And there's a fellow named Dom Ward that went to all the races. And they had a cylinder pressure, they had all equipment for cylinder pressure. They made spark plugs that had a sensor in it.
Mm-hmm. And
they would come with a whole box of spark plugs, you know, whole suitcase full of these I call them spark plugs, but they had sensors in them, so you could index them. And we put them in there, and I made the first pull, and he looks at it, he goes, "Oh, this thing's detonating." This one, "Oh, I'm detonating." He goes, "No, you need to be in a form of." I was like nervous as hell, you know, because he's telling me this thing's detonating. You need a form of detonation to make optimum power.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a controlled detonation. It's just how much detonation you get away with without it hurting, you know, the engine itself.
That's what I mean. I imagine that if you got the ability to analyze what's actually going on in the chamber, it's probably going to take you, you know, a year to figure out every last little nuance as far as what it really means. I mean, you have all this data, but you gotta be able to process it.
He was there 3 days. It's the single biggest pickup we've ever made on a dyno. In 3 days, we found almost 20 horsepower on the average. Damn. I went to Memphis and was the only car to run 200 miles an hour.
That's crazy.
And I swear it was on account of what we learned there. You know, not just the, you know, what we were missing, but tuning. You know, how much can I lean on it? You know, the individual. It immediately lets you individual cylinder time properly. You know, I do it now. I put a fresh set of plugs on the dyno. I make 2 pulls, look at the plugs. You know, then I start putting timing in cylinders that didn't look as much, and if it didn't hurt it, I leave it in. If it hurts it, I take a little out. You know, it's really a guessing game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, I might end up 3 or 4 horsepower better, but who knows? It could be more than that. I might be hurting some cylinders and not hurting other ones.
Yeah, I mean, like an 8-cylinder analysis of what's really going on. I mean, that to me, I said it to Tom probably before we ever started this.
Yep.
Even on the old dyno, I said, God, I'd love to know. Matter of fact, remember the guy Log Boy? You remember him? Mm-hmm. All right. Well, when he was hanging around, there was something with, like, I think he worked for Lucent or somebody. They had a fiber optic that he thought, you know, could possibly be used to do this. And I mean, I remember him looking into it, trying to figure out if it could be done. And, you know, probably now what's happened is they've gone to different sensors and everything else. And, you know, I mean, who the hell knows? But that was a really interesting idea. But everybody knew that, God, if you could just read everything that transpired in a cylinder all the way during its combustion cycle, that's got to be a massive tuning aid. And I'm sure all the Cup guys probably have it. I mean, they got to have that stuff, don't they?
And I don't know this, but I'd be very shocked if Jason Line and those guys didn't have cylinder pressure on their dyno.
Yeah, they probably do.
You know, it's not like I'm letting some secret out. They never told me. I don't ask questions that I don't think they want to answer, but they are too good with the tune-up.
Hey,
there's other smart people out there.
Hey, Tom,
let
me ask you a question. This is another listener asking a question. Where do you like to see peak cylinder pressure with regard to top dead center?
Depends on which day you're asking me.
I mean, I guess that really comes down to, once you can get that data, you need that data first.
I think it has, like on the flat top motors.
So it's different on every motor, I guess.
Yeah.
That was another question.
Depends a lot on the dome and the chamber.
Okay.
And I prove myself wrong all the time. Right when we think we have a little something, and we'll try to design a cam around, helping that. We put it on the dyno and change cams. Didn't like that. So it's not that I wouldn't answer. I would be just given it's too broad. I work on too many different.
Yeah.
If I just worked on one, I'd be able to tell you what I thought. But I'm sorry about that. I don't.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
No, that's a really tough question, because unless you're using a cylinder pressure monitor, you wouldn't really know where. And, I believe that in those cylinder pressure monitoring things, from the things I've looked at, there's not one peak.
Yep.
There's a couple, there's some really deep stuff that goes on there.
Yep.
Really deep. That's why I really want to get the guys from Plex on.
Yep.
And a lot of the import guys are involved with that.
One thing, when the Autolite guys were there, the more that you hit it spot on, Mike. The more it detonated, the more peaks there were.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we worked on. Getting it not to have as many spikes in their so-called graft.
Right. And if you took all the spikes out, like you said, you need a little bit of that be on the edge of detonation to be good. So
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we did. We tuned the cylinders so we had, 2 or 3 spikes, not 5 or 6 spikes. You know what I mean? And then we went in there and I know it was a crude way of doing it back in the day, but we had different. We called it uneven engines. We might have 15-2 compression in one cylinder and 16 in another one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And the motor responded to it. Terry, we did all the pistons in house,
mm-hmm.
and he had his program. We did 8 pistons at a time on a CNC machine, Jessel, and every dome was a different height. Well, I shouldn't say every dome, but there was, at least 3 different dome heights
mm-hmm.
when we got done for compression.
Yeah, I remember that in alcohol funny car and dragster too. Same thing, different rod lengths,
right.
Different compression, different holes.
We were ahead of the curve. We just knew we just had more information on which cylinders to do it to.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, here's the problem. For me to even begin to think that way, I have a problem. Whether it's OCD or whatever you want to call it, I could never get to a point where I'd be satisfied to say, okay, look, we removed compression from this hole and this hole, but we did pick up, but we did. I mean, the combinations would be overwhelming, and I'd short out. It would never be good for me. But the cylinder pressure thing, I think that would really help determine what each hole really needed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they get a lot of it now with AFR in every hole. Wideband in every hole.
Oh, there's no doubt that if I raced with 802s back when I raced, I would have been way faster.
Sure, certainly. There's no way around that.
Not all of a sudden I got, I always, the 3 best tuners I've ever been around were Grumpy, Jenkins, natural tuners, I should say, Warren Johnson, and believe it or not, Dick Maskin. Dick Maskin might be the best one of those 3, believe it or not.
Wow.
And
that's saying a lot.
I guarantee you, I could tune.
You're hating.
I could tune as good. I could tune as good as any of those 3 now. I have way more information than they ever had.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember going over to Jenkins. I forgot who he was working with at the time, and they didn't allow beer in that pit. He'd come over on Friday night for a beer, and my crew guy Paulie, remember Paulie, Tom?
Yep.
Yeah. I do too.
Put his foot on top of the cooler and go, okay, how many beers? That's how many questions we get to ask.
Yeah, he was.
I showed him a spark plug. He goes, you need to get this thing out of gear a little earlier. I bet you think this thing is rich. You need to put some fuel in it. It's only rich because you're filling the valves, shifting it too hot.
Wow.
He leaves, takes his 2 beers and leaves. Paulie goes, did you show him your run? I go, no. The thing got out of the groove. I hit the rev limiter in low gear and right close to the rev limiter in second and third. That guy looked at the spark plug, knew I over revved it, and that's why the thing looked rich.
That's amazing.
The valves. He told me, I said to Paulie, what are we going to do tomorrow? He says, put some fuel in it. I said, I'll set 2 beers, put some fuel in it.
All right. 2 things that I want to bring up, and then we'll close this out for the evening. Another engine builder in the area who was involved with Pro Stock. I want to know a personal question. Well, not I have something that bothered me.
Get it out.
I heard that in the very beginning of titanium wrist pins, that people put them in and they lost power and they couldn't figure out why. Is that true or not?
We put them in, and unless we put about 5 valve piston to pin clearance, we lost power. And I think it's because they were just. This is my thought on it. This is just my thought. They were the first pins we ever had that had Casidium coating on it.
Mm-hmm.
They were locking up, but not transferring metal because it wasn't sticking to Casidium. We didn't realize it.
Exactly right.
So you didn't know. Bound up, and you couldn't tell.
They were just
sticking apart. They look beautiful.
They were sticky.
In case you guys, a little side note here, in case you guys want any wrist pins, I got about 15 sets still in my old.
Because I remember,
brand new.
I remember the guy that I'm talking about. I'm sure you know exactly who he is. That it was a problem, and the guy Jerry from the shop used to talk about it. And he's like, "You're not going to believe this. It was those fucking wrist pins." And I'm like, "Get the fuck!" I said, "Why?" But yeah, that's
they didn't know how to surface treat them.
That was my thought on it. Do you think I was right, Tom?
Yeah, you're definitely right, because they didn't know how to surface treat them. Then they were looking at a RA a different way to RA is a different. It's subjective how you look at it, peaks and valleys.
Right.
You can have a really low RA, and you could make something like a very fine file.
RA, but your RVK is
right.
horrible.
Right. So you make it a file, and this thing is wanting to bind up all the time, and you can't see it. Mm-hmm. It's making holes bigger. It's doing all kind of crazy.
So, Tom, you had this information. You withheld it from me all this time.
I did. You never asked me. I don't know why you didn't ask me.
What a dick.
All right. What's your second one?
I do run them. I'll use them in an under 600 horsepower comp eliminator motor. It seems like under 600 horsepower, you could get away with it in a comp eliminator motor.
Yeah.
All right.
Whether it's better or not, I don't know. But it doesn't hurt it, and the guy likes to hear he's got titanium wrist pins in it.
Yeah, it always sounds good.
Makes me happy.
Yeah.
So you know what you want to do? That's what the customer likes. That's what he gets.
Yep.
Okay.
It's like over 600 horsepower is my limit. So.
Last thing that I want to bring up, because it's just, when you're a little younger, stuff sticks in your head. Now, I don't know, wasn't that young, but I remember it said to me, at the old shop, we didn't have a fuel pump. We had nitrogen pressurized gasoline. So we didn't, and obviously Tommy remembers the night that was a problem. There are some times that can not go how you'd like. But I remember you guys specifically, and I think you were in comp then. Tommy Martino and Tommy Kling coming up to dyno, and they had taken the back plate off the dyno. It's like a tool tray, and they adjusted the regulators down. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, because we usually kept the regulars like 7.5. And what I remember, and now Tommy, I imagine since Pro Stock is fuel injected now, this is something we can talk about, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make, because they started talking about it, I'm like, maybe comp or whatever. But I guess from what you guys had told me is that if you were running it like 6 or 7, that was kind of too high on a gear change.
Well, I could tell you this, and most of the comp guys know it now. My comp guys run 4.5 pounds of fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And we run big needles and seats and low fuel pressure. Once you figure out how to get it to leave the starting line without stumbling, your fuel curve stays way flatter because you're filling the bowl faster, so it never gets, your weight of the fuel in the bowls doesn't change as much.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we ran a 112 needle and seat, forever. That's the only thing to run. Well, we run 140 needle and seats, and I just dynoed Jim Kimbrough's T-Rex automatic motor. It's got a 140 needle and seat in a 339-inch engine that makes 965 horsepower.
Wow.
At 4.5 pounds of fuel pressure.
That's a big hole.
And if I remember correctly, when they adjusted the fuel pressure down, they went to like 4.25, 4.5. That's what they went to on a dyno.
Yeah.
And I remember I said something to Tommy.
We had 128 needles and seats that we weren't telling anybody.
Yep.
And I can't take credit for that. That was Tommy Kling's thought.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because, Tommy.
Most of those ideas were his thought. I just took credit for it.
You had some.
Yeah, because I said, Tommy, that low? And he's like, yeah, don't talk to anybody about this. And I'm like, all right, good enough. Tommy didn't have to tell me twice. That was for sure.
Right.
But I remember those things, and I think those are the reason I wanted to bring that up at the end is I want people to realize that if you were sitting there thinking about your car and why your car goes what it goes, you would never think that, well, maybe I have a little too much fuel pressure, or maybe there's something strange happening in gear change. And with the electronic guys, probably a lot of it's out. But I mean, that's the level of detail.
Yeah.
If you want to be the fast guy, no matter what you do, that level of detail has to be there.
I'll leave you with this, and it's so true. I would say that 70% of my tuning questions to my customers, whether it be bracket, super stock, not my circle track guys, they just take gear out. They'll call me with an issue. The first thing I ask them is how much fuel pressure you're running, and at least 50% of the time, their issue is too much fuel pressure.
Yep.
And when I tell them get it down, don't run more than 6. And I'm working them to 5 when I tell them the first time 6. But if I told them 5, they would just hang up and not do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It takes me 20 minutes on the phone to get them off that 7.25 down to 6. They're going to burn the motor up. You're not. Listen, we could race a pro stock car, 1,400 plus horsepower on number 6 lines, not number 8 lines that you think you need to have at 4 pounds of fuel pressure, and it doesn't burn up. You're not going to burn up, your 700 horsepower bracket motor. Knock your fuel pressure down.
I always thought that was hilarious. The people that have gone, up in fuel line, like from the regulators out there.
They got 10s and 12s. It's oil line all over.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, that's good info. Hey, you've been good, Tom. I mean, people have been banging the board, and it's always great having you on. Very informative.
Well, I enjoyed it. I anytime you guys, feel a need to be bored with me, give me a call.
No, I mean, this is important because a lot of this information, like, you don't normally get to talk to this level of a person. I mean, like you go talk to your engine builder. And, well, you know what I mean?
No,
like
it's true.
It's true. I mean, because, and to me, I have an astronomical amount of respect for Tommy, and because I know what he's accomplished, I know what he's done. And, I think about all the people you could, go to and talk to, and there's not a lot of Tommies out there anymore.
I think I was very lucky. I think the only thing I'm smart about is not letting my ego get in the way of learning from people that are smarter than me. And from your father to Tommy Kling, to driving for Richard Maskin and being friends with Grump and being friends with Jenkins, with
Johnson.
Those the stuff that you learn from them, they don't realize when they're talking to you, you're teaching you because they think you're smarter than you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I just listen. And like I said, I said to Paulie, what do you think we should do? He said, it costs us 2 beers. We're putting bigger jets in.
All right. Well, look, plug your business once again. Yeah. Give out a phone number and anything else you need.
Martino Race Engines at 732-919-0024. We do everything. It doesn't matter just regular machine work, from valve jobs, boring, balancing, honing. We specialize in honing, building complete engines, whether it be street rod, drag race, or circle track. We do an awful lot of circle track stuff. If you guys are ever at anyone's ever at Wall Stadium, they'll see plenty of MB and Martino decals on hood scoops as they come down and pull on the track. So it's actually kind of comical.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, Tommy.
Hey.
Always a pleasure, man.
Oh, yeah.
We'll do it again. Thanks, Tom.
All right, Tom. Stop by, Tom.
Yeah, I will. We got to catch up.
Bring Mike down with you one day.
There you go.
I'll try.
Got to get me to leave my house.
Get him off the compound.
All right. See you, Tommy.
All right, bud.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Hey, anybody that's thinking about calling him too, I got to tell you that shop is fantastic.
Yeah.
And he said he got it in there right at the end that he specializes in cylinder honing.
Mm-hmm.
His honing deal is crazy.
I'm sure it is.
It literally is crazy.
I know how crazy it was because I know what they went through with the Pro Stock stuff.
I'm not going to get into detail, but I know one of his honing heads I think was $5,500.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I wasn't trying to, blow Tommy up like, oh my God, he's the greatest. I mean, but what it is that, I mean, look, see,
no, when you deal with those people, you have no choice. But I mean, if you take it in like he has and he's wanted to,
right,
with that passion, he just is on a level that's
no. But what I'm saying now that I couldn't say before, is that half the people that are engine builders are kind of like not at this level. I'm not going to say they're retards, but they're not.
No, they're not at that level.
Well, they think they're at that level, so they don't want to listen and learn.
The best analogy anybody ever gave me, or the best phrase was, they just don't know they're stupid.
Yep.
I mean, and I don't mean that as bad as it is, but you don't know what you don't know.
No doubt.
And that's exactly what Tommy was saying. The people talking to you might think you have much more on the ball than you do.
Yep.
So every little nugget, and I mean, my father said it all the time, every motor you take apart, it doesn't matter if it came from a guy who repairs lawnmowers or it came from the greatest guy in the world. Keep an open mind.
There's something to learn.
There might be something to learn from everything you work on.
Well, it could be good or bad.
Yeah.
But there's always something to learn.
Absolutely.
I want to say one thing, though.
Yes.
Jenkins didn't ever think he was talking to somebody that was smarter than him.
Was he very much that way? I never.
No. Not. I don't mean that in a bad way.
Yeah.
That man was just, Tommy said that Maskin was the smartest guy.
Mm-hmm.
He could be.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't spent a lot of time with him, but Bill Jenkins was a genius.
Yeah,
pure genius.
He had called the shop on 2 or 3 occasions.
I remember that.
Yeah, but I remember. I think you were there one day.
Yeah,
and I answered. He's like, "It's Ralph there." And I was like, "Who's this?" Jenkins. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "Dad, it's Bill Jenkins." He's like, "Okay." No.
Well, your dad was one of those guys too.
I know, I know. But it was just, I remember the first time that happened, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That was.
First time I met the guy, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Did he tell you to take gear out?
What's that?
Tell you to take gear out?
No.
Those guys, I mean, I really feel bad for Tommy. The circle track stuff is going to ruin him, dude. It's going to put him in a home. It's going to make him as bitter as.
No, it'll probably put him in jail because he's going to kill somebody.
As bitter as an engine builder could ever get, the circle track stuff will drive you over the edge. Like, I can't, don't even get me started because we'll be here for another 2 hours.
Just take some gear out of it, Mike.
Take some gear out of it. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope everybody wanted more technical stuff. This was definitely a more technical discussion.
Oh, yeah.
I know I saw Scott Clark on there and said that this is awesome. Pay attention.
Yep.
Look, the guys that this isn't your deal, you probably won't learn anything from it. But if you really want to learn something, listen to some of the things he said and do some research.
We'll have comedy next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
We're going to try to get the 10.5 guy next time, right?
10.5 guy?
Anthony.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about current fast race cars.
Yes.
Outlaw 10.5, X275, anything that ends with a 5, rhymes with 5. I'm stopping now.
Thank you. Thank you. I was about to play the Magnum PI song. I'm sure I talked to Anthony, and I know he's buried at work, and he absolutely wants to come on.
I put him on the schedule, so he has to be on.
Okay, has to be on. All right. Well, we'll talk to him this week.
Yeah,
and on. I mean, look. I know from his position what it's like to be buried, and have it get a little tough to get out of there to do work. But
this is Power and Speed.
Yeah,
we overrule.
I'm sure that is. He'll put it right on his calendar immediately. All right, well, we'll be back next week. We will have somebody. We're hoping for Anthony DeSoma. Might not be, but we'll have somebody. We got some stuff going on. See you next time.
Good night, guys.